The family photos showed 5 years of precious moments. Birthday parties, first steps, bedtime stories. But when Ellen asked Michelle Park to tell her about her daughter, her answer shattered everything. "She's not really mine." Michelle Park, 28, sat in the interview chair, holding the hand of 5-year-old Emma, who smiled innocently at the cameras. To everyone watching, they looked like any loving mother and daughter sharing their story on national television. The truth was far more devastating than anyone could imagine. The Ellen DeGeneres Show had invited Michelle during their Single Mothers Who Inspire Week to discuss raising a child alone after losing her husband in a car accident. Her social media following had grown to hundreds of thousands as she documented their journey together, sharing advice about single parenting and healing from loss. What Ellen's producers didn't know was that Michelle's entire life was built on the most unthinkable crime a woman could commit. 5 years ago, in the depths of a mental breakdown after losing her own baby, Michelle had walked into a hospital and taken someone else's child. The story Michelle told online was carefully crafted. She'd claimed that Emma was born just before her husband's death, that she was raising her daughter to honor his memory. Thousands of followers sent support, donations, and love to the grieving widow and her beautiful little girl. "Michelle," Ellen began warmly, "tell us about Emma. She's such a beautiful little girl." Michelle's smile was practiced, perfected over 5 years of living a lie. "She's my everything, my reason for getting up every morning." Ellen looked at Emma, who was playing quietly with a toy. "How old were you when your daddy went to heaven, sweetheart?" Emma looked confused. "I don't remember having a daddy," Michelle quickly interjected. "She was very young when he passed. She doesn't have many memories of him." Ellen felt something shift in the dynamic. "Michelle, you've shared your story online about losing your husband just after Emma was born." "Yes," Michelle said carefully. "It's been just the two of us for her whole life." Ellen studied Michelle's face. "That must have been incredibly difficult, being pregnant and then losing your partner." Michelle's composure flickered for just a moment. "The pregnancy was complicated." "In what way?" Michelle looked at Emma, then back at Ellen. "I lost the baby. At 7 months, she was stillborn." The studio fell silent. Ellen felt confusion wash over her. "Michelle, I'm confused. You lost a baby, but Emma is here with you?" Michelle's hands began to tremble. That's when everything went wrong. Ellen realized they were entering dangerous territory. "What do you mean?" "After I lost my baby, after my husband died in the accident 2 weeks later, I had a complete breakdown," Michelle said quietly. "That's understandable. Losing a child and a spouse so close together. I was hospitalized for severe depression and psychosis," Michelle continued. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't thinking at all." Ellen felt dread building. "Michelle, what happened?" Michelle looked at Emma, who was still playing innocently. "I took her from the hospital." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Ellen stared at Michelle, trying to process what she'd just heard. "You took her?" "I was visiting the hospital where I'd lost my baby," Michelle said, tears beginning to flow. "I saw her in the nursery. She looked exactly like I imagined my daughter would look." Ellen felt her chest tighten. "Michelle, are you saying you kidnapped Emma?" "I wasn't thinking," Michelle sobbed. "I was broken. I convinced myself she was meant to be mine, that God was giving me back what I'd lost." Ellen looked at Emma, who was now paying attention to the adult conversation with growing concern. "Emma, sweetheart, can you go sit with the nice lady over there for a minute?" A production assistant gently led Emma away from the stage, while Michelle collapsed into tears. "Michelle," Ellen said carefully, "there's a family somewhere who has been looking for their daughter for 5 years." "I know," Michelle whispered. "I've seen the missing posters. I've watched the news stories. But by then, she was already my daughter." Ellen felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Michelle was confessing. "How did you manage to take her without being caught?" The hospital was chaotic that day. There had been an emergency, and security was focused elsewhere, Michelle explained. "I just walked out with her. No one stopped me." And you've been raising her as your own ever since? She is my own, Michelle said desperately. I've been her mother for 5 years. I'm the only mother she's ever known. Ellen realized the complexity of the situation. But Michelle, she has biological parents who never stopped looking for her. I thought about returning her, Michelle said, especially in the beginning, but every day that passed made it harder. She started calling me Mama. She needed me. Ellen felt torn between sympathy for Michelle's mental state and horror at what she'd done. What made you decide to come on the show today? Because I can't live with the secret anymore, Michelle said. Every night I look at her and know that somewhere her real mother is crying herself to sleep. Ellen made a decision that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. Michelle, I need to tell you something. Michelle looked up with alarm. What? We've been in contact with the FBI about missing children cases. When your story was submitted to our show, it raised some questions. Michelle's face went white. What kind of questions? Emma's biological mother, Sophia Chen, has been searching for her daughter for 5 years. She never gave up hope. Michelle began hyperventilating. She's here? Yes, Ellen said gently. She's backstage. She's been waiting 5 years to meet her daughter. Michelle stood up abruptly. No, this can't happen. Emma is my daughter. She doesn't know any other mother. Ellen felt the weight of having to facilitate the most difficult reunion imaginable. Michelle, Emma's real name is Sophia Chen. She was 3 days old when she was taken. Her name is Emma, Michelle said desperately. Emma Michelle Park. That's who she is. Ellen realized Michelle was clinging to the identity she'd created. Would you be willing to meet Sarah? What would that accomplish? Michelle asked. It would just confuse Emma and destroy the family we've built. Ellen made another decision. Michelle, Sarah is coming out now. Sophia Chen, 32, emerged from backstage. She was shaking as she walked across the stage, her eyes searching desperately for the child she'd lost 5 years ago. When Sarah saw Emma playing nearby, she gasped audibly. Oh my God, Sophia. Michelle stepped protectively in front of Emma. Please don't confuse her. Sarah looked at Michelle with a mixture of rage and desperation. You stole my baby. You stole 5 years of her life from me. I raised her, Michelle said defiantly. I loved her. I gave her everything. You gave her a stolen life, Sarah replied. I've missed her first word, her first steps, her first day of school. You took everything from me. Ellen watched this confrontation with growing concern. Sarah, how has these 5 years been for you? Hell, Sarah said simply. Pure hell. I've never stopped looking. I've never stopped hoping. I've never stopped believing I'd find her. Michelle was crying. But she's happy. Look at her. She's healthy and happy and loved. By a kidnapper, Sarah said. You're not her mother. You're the woman who destroyed my life. Ellen realized Emma was watching this exchange with confusion and fear. Emma, sweetheart, come here. Emma ran to Michelle and buried her face in her lap. Mama, why is that lady angry? Sarah's heart broke visibly. Because I'm your real mama, sweetheart, and I've been looking for you for a very long time. Emma looked between Michelle and Sarah with confusion. I already have a mama. Ellen felt the impossible complexity of the situation. Michelle, what do you think should happen now? I think we should leave, Michelle said, holding Emma tightly. This is traumatic for her. Running away won't solve this, Ellen said gently. The FBI is already involved. This is bigger than what we can handle on this show. Sarah approached slowly. Emma, Sophia, I know this is confusing, but I've loved you every day for 5 years, even when I couldn't see you. Emma hid her face deeper in Michelle's shoulder. I want to go home. Michelle looked at Ellen with desperation. See, you're traumatizing her. She doesn't understand any of this. Because you've built her entire identity on a lie, Sarah said. She has a right to know who she really is. Ellen made an announcement. Everyone, we need to pause the taping. This situation requires professional intervention. FBI agents who had been waiting off stage approached quietly. The lead agent spoke to Michelle with surprising gentleness. Ma'am, We're going to need you to come with us. Emma will be placed in protective custody while we sort this out." Michelle panicked. "No, you can't take her from me. I'm her mother." "You're not her mother," the agent said firmly but kindly. "You're someone who needs help." Sarah stepped forward. Can I hold her?" Emma looked at Sarah with curiosity but clung to Michelle. "Mama, I'm scared." Michelle's heart broke as she realized the damage she'd caused. "I know, baby. I'm scared too." Ellen watched as the agents gently but firmly separated Michelle from Emma. The little girl cried for Michelle as Sarah tentatively took her daughter for the first time in 5 years. "It's okay," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Mama's here. Mama's finally here." But Emma continued to cry for Michelle, the only mother she could remember. The episode never aired. Instead, Ellen worked with authorities to ensure both families received the support they needed during the transition. Michelle was arrested but received psychiatric treatment instead of prison time. Her lawyers argued successfully that her actions were the result of severe mental illness following the loss of her baby and husband. Sarah faced the difficult task of reconnecting with a daughter who didn't remember her and grieved for the kidnapper she'd called Mama. Family therapists worked with them to help Emma understand her true identity while honoring the bonds she'd formed. 6 months later, Ellen received an update. Emma was slowly adjusting to life with her biological family, though she still asked about Michelle. Sarah had allowed supervised visits, understanding that completely severing the bond would traumatize Emma further. Michelle, with proper medication and therapy, had come to understand the magnitude of what she'd done. She'd written countless letters to Sarah, begging forgiveness and expressing gratitude that Sarah allowed her to remain part of Emma's life in a limited way. The most difficult aspect was explaining to Emma why the woman she'd called Mama wasn't actually her mother. Child psychologists worked carefully to help her understand that Michelle loved her, but had made a very big mistake when she was sick. Ellen kept a photo from that day, not of the reunion, which had been too traumatic to celebrate, but of Emma playing peacefully before the truth was revealed. It reminded her that sometimes love and harm can coexist in the same action. A year later, Sarah sent Ellen a video. Emma, now 6, was calling her mama again and had begun to form new memories with her biological family. She still remembered Michelle and asked about her, but she was healing. Michelle had been released to a supervised living facility where she continued therapy. She'd started volunteering with other women who'd lost babies, helping them process their grief in healthy ways instead of the destructive path she'd chosen. "I know I can never undo what I did," Michelle wrote to Ellen, "but I can spend the rest of my life making sure no other mother goes through what Sarah went through because of someone like me." The case highlighted the complex intersection of mental illness, crime, and love. Michelle had genuinely loved Emma, had raised her well, had been a devoted mother, but that love was built on theft, on another mother's anguish, on a foundation that could never be stable. Ellen learned that sometimes the most loving act is admitting that love isn't enough to justify harm, that healing requires facing truth, even when truth destroys the life you've built. Because real love doesn't take, it gives. It doesn't hide, it reveals. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let go of what you love most, so it can return to where it truly belongs. Emma's story became one of the most complex custody cases in family court history. But ultimately, it became a story about healing, forgiveness, and the long journey back to truth. Michelle Park learned that you cannot build happiness on someone else's devastation. Sophia Chen learned that motherhood sometimes means sharing your child with the person who raised them, even when that person hurt you beyond measure. And Emma learned that families can be complicated, that love can exist in many forms, and that sometimes the people who hurt us are also the people who loved us, even when their love was wrong.